Well, good evening, 6 o'clock. So let's call the meeting to order. I welcome everybody to meeting number 74. How about that? Nancy, you have attendance?
I do.
You? Okay. We have minutes from October 4th. Any changes, corrections?
One small change on page 2 under architect report. The last bullet should say funding instead of funded.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Okay, moved by Lois, seconded by Bob Ike. Anybody else have anything before we vote?
I just have a quick question, Chair. So Nancy, how do we handle the cancellation? In the minutes, it said, the next meetings are blah, blah. But of course, we canceled the last meeting in October. So would that be handled in the minutes that go out from tonight?
No, there's no change to the prior minutes because those
Okay.
reported what happened then. And we just posted a cancellation of last one.
Cancellation. Okay, yeah, I just wasn't sure how that was handled. Thank you.
Anything else on these before we vote? All in favor of approving minutes as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Take it away, get off.
Not getting everybody here. Any nays? Anybody abstaining? Nancy, I think you better take a roll call vote.
No, I got them. Somebody
Did you?
raised their virtual hand, so I got
Thank
everybody.
you. Thank you. Okay. All right. So motion passes. Appreciate that. Someday we'll be in person again. Okay. All right. So we got our minutes. New business. I would like to report on happening since our last meeting. We received notice from the DECD that owing to the fact that our project scope has changed, they are reviewing our grant of approximately $5.6 million and that it could be in jeopardy. And they asked that we meet with them to review exactly what's going on with our scope. One of the reasons they were alerted to this, well, probably the main reason they were alerted to this, was a newspaper article quoting things that happened at the town council meeting. So we did meet with them, let's see, I'm just looking at my calendar. We met with them on October 13th. It was a staff meeting, town manager, town attorney, Nancy, Elizabeth, myself were there. We met with their 2 staff members and it was a very productive, very cordial meeting. And one of the first things they said to us was that they wanted to find out what's really going on and did not want to rely on a newspaper article. But I think which was very good, so we had a chance to talk about our change in scope. We learned an awful lot. We learned that we were not alone, that it seems the vast majority of projects that have received CIF funding is in the same boat we are. Cost escalations have just caused scope changes. So most of these projects cannot do everything they hoped to do, everything they had promised to do when they applied for the grant. So DECD has decided to analyze all of the projects in this condition and decide if the changes that are being made as a result of cost escalations are, according in their words, substantial changes. And they have set some guidelines for themselves on what is a substantial change and what is not. We reviewed with them the changes that we're making. And on a preliminary basis, they seem to think that we would fall below the threshold of substantial. The process they're invoking is a written response from us, followed by their review at staff level, a recommendation by staff to the commissioner of DECD on whether or not action should be taken on the grant based on this criteria that they have. So a response was formulated by the town manager, who is really taking the lead in this process. Town manager asked for input from Elizabeth and Ava, from myself, and from Nancy as our purchasing risk manager director and finance director. And then the town manager did submit a response to, or I should say, a description of our changes. We received this afternoon, just within a matter of a few hours ago, follow-up questions that they have. And that again will go back to town manager to respond. He's asked for input and review of whatever we come up with for a response from Elizabeth, myself, Nancy, and the town attorney. So we hope to get that back extremely fast to them. Most of the questions, I'd say all the questions, are basically here we were before and here we're going to be after. So they're really making a judgment on a lot of things here about the project. They're in a really difficult position because they have hundreds, literally, projects in this position. So we want to jump on this right away. It's really the reason why we had no meeting last week. We were in limbo with this situation. So therefore, you know, without this money, we're in very serious trouble with the project as a whole. So that's what's going on with this grant. I can say that based on this criteria that they have invoked with substantial change, not substantial change, that it's obvious to me that we need to proceed with McMahon with option number one, which is ongoing at the present anyways with our consultants. Because basically, if we stop work at McMahon to wait for more money, if we stop work for any reason at McMahon, I would say we fall into the substantial change category, and there goes our grant. Okay. But based on the work that we've been talking about in option number one, which covers all the work that Public Works is talking about, mechanical changes, electrical, security systems, etc. All things that we've reviewed. Plus, we have money for interior renovations, and all of that would be, anything we do on the interior would follow the same process that we've done in the past. The architect working closely with library representatives, and making sure that we're going to get what we need to make these changes. So I think we need to at some point tonight definitively decide on that choice. Like I said, if we stop, wait for more money, I think we can say goodbye to the $5.6 million. It just changes us into their wording, a substantial change by no work occurring at McMahon. So we can discuss that in more detail when we go through reports, updates from our professionals here. So that reply, like I said, is going to go back. We hope to get a positive response quickly from the commissioner. and we hope all will be well at that juncture. So why don't we move on to reports, and then we can see how all this falls into place. So let's go first to project update from Downs. We've got Scott with us, and who else is here? John Downs is with us, and Anthony.
What's going on, everybody? How are you doing this evening? All right, I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to go over an agenda, a couple items here in the near future that we're going to bring to the table. So hopefully everybody can see my screen. All right. Project update, subcontracts and permits. We continue to issue contracts to the remaining subcontractors. Update on the permits. We did receive our general building permit from the town, which is good news. We are still waiting on the demolition permit for the mass demolition, which is being held up by the DEP and the FMC approval. And everybody understands that the flood management certificate is still under review. I did touch base with Rock from SLR. He did get notification in his inbox that the DEP received it and they are currently reviewing it. At this point in time, Mark, I don't know if that DECD funding or any of that stuff going on is going to affect anything with this flood management certificate. But we are continuing to push that on all ends of the spectrum here. But we continue to issue permits. We continue to get our subcontractors engaged on all that front end paperwork, and we're proceeding accordingly. Item B here is construction schedule update. From the last meeting, we had all the interior and exterior abatement as well as the selective demolition has been completed within Prosser. Right now, we're just waiting to knock the building down, but we got to get those utility disconnects and we got a trench, and that's all contingent upon this FMC approval. We've installed a custom scrim installation on the exterior of the fencing. So if you guys drive by, you guys do see it. It should be up. And the DECD and state sign, the posts went up today and the sign should be installed tomorrow. As for Riley, all the interior abatement and selective demolition have been completed within Riley. A site visit we need to conduct with the building department this week to see if we could do mass demolition to that existing building. We discovered that the utility lines that are connected to that building are actually above ground where we won't need to trench, which won't affect the FMC. So we are trying to get Dwight's approval on that so we could at least knock this building down and keep moving and knocking things off the list of things to do. Site work, just a general site update here. All the sedimentation and erosion control measures have been installed. Brush removal is continuing. We did some partial tree protections at this time, and we actually had a visit on site today to discuss tree removal. With that being said, once that was finalized, we're going to set up a pre-installation meeting once we have all the safety plans for Manafort and their second tier subcontractor who will be demoing and removing the trees. A general item I like to talk about construction schedule update is the progress of our construction schedule is currently being held up due to this DEP and FMC approval. We were supposed to start mass demolition on this building on October 20th. And right now we are currently delayed and being held up with that point in time. I know everybody is trying to talk to the DEP, find a way in, get a connection, see what we could do. But at this time, we're being held up. With my team, Scott, Jason, and Johnny, we are in the process of looking at certain tasks that we could mitigate and we could accelerate to get the contract schedule back on as we lose some time here waiting for that FMC approval. All right. You guys have any questions or comments before I move on to item C here? All right. Next meeting, next committee meeting, we like to start bringing our monthly project monthly reports to everybody's attention. So I'm going to review a table of contents with everybody. All right. And this will basically be the layout of how we are going to deliver these monthly reports at the last meeting of the month on this committee level. So hang tight 1 second. Let me pull up this table of contents. All right. So first things first with the monthly reports, we'll be getting a executive summary, basically a synopsis of where we are, a snapshot in time on the project, how it's looking schedule wise, upcoming tasks, any upcoming major milestones and meetings. So that will be a written paragraph. Section 2 will be able to report all the cost reports, any updated change order, potential change order log. You guys will be able to see what's been approved, what's pending, and what's to come. Along with that, you'll have a budget summary report to see where we stand on all our budgets, including any contingency expenditures and allowance log here for any allowance expenditures as well. Section 3 will be just a document summary of logs, any open RFIs and open submittals for document control purposes. Item 4 here will be our EEO workforce goals and our MWB business enterprise update. We will have a customized report to go over for workforce goals of MWB subcontractors and their minority participation for second tier subcontractors, as well as the Bloomfield resident requirement. Right now, we are still a little early before all these reports start getting developed. We did have EDI on site, who we understand had a Bloomfield resident during the entire time of their installation. As these subcontractors get on board and the labor starts, these reports are usually trickle in a few weeks behind the labor that's heading out into the field. So we'll have a whole report attached to this section. All right. We will give a section 5 here will be a schedule update. We like to update the master schedule every few weeks, at least once a month, to see where we are, snapshot in time with what we've closed, what we've completed, what's upcoming, and what we're looking at. The last item will be progress photos of the project, okay, which actually I do have a set I like to review with everybody and go over. Basically, it gives us a snapshot in time of what we completed during the month in a nice fashion for people that can't get out there and visit the job site. All right. Does anybody have any questions regarding, this monthly report as we start delivering it and on a month-to-month basis?
Lois?
Could you tell me what an RFI is?
RFI is a request for information. So if a subcontractor or ourselves have a clarification that we need Jeff to answer and his consultants, they look into the question for us and they confirm it. They help us and guide us in the right direction. If something was missing or something was unforeseen, they basically help us and figure out as a team where to go and what to do for this scenario.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, let me stop sharing this file here and I'll go back into it and I'll get over to the pictures. Let's see here.
And you'll email that to everybody, right?
I will email prior to the meetings.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Jeff. Hold on 1 second. Can everybody see my my screen?
Not yet.
No,
Not yet.
How about now?
Nope.
Not yet.
no.
Hang tight. How about now?
There we go.
Yes.
All right, sounds good. We're cooking with fire now. All right, so I'm gonna just go through a couple of these photos. I'll scroll. If you guys want to stop or holler at me to slow down, please let me know. All right, so this is one of the defense gates on the processor side with the custom scrim installed.
We take that wrinkle out.
I'll get my iron out this weekend. We'll take care of that. That's no problem.
Punch list comes at the end, Jeff.
All right, there's another custom scrim and temp fence that was installed on our Riley side. Behind that, you can see our lovely field office. It will be called a field office and not a trailer. All right. This is interior demolition picture. We're looking at the corner of the lower level by the entrance near the bathrooms in the former lounge and kitchen area. Okay. This is directly in from that lower level main entrance. Selective demolition took place. That's looking into that lounge and kitchen area as you step in. All right. This shot here is the first floor of the main library interior selected demolition. The view we got here is looking out towards the main entrance from the old history room, which would be behind us. All right. This here is the first floor, main library enclosures. We had to enclose all these windows for our exterior window abatement. That was those unforeseen windows that were never tested. They did come back hot and we had to remove them. This is also first floor library, main floor, interior selected demolition of the office area. And all this stuff has been abated. That's why we were able to get in there and do our selective demolition. Again, this is the first floor main library where a lot of this work was, interior selective demo. Right here, the view is we're looking out towards the right-hand side of the office up there. This is the opposite side upstairs on the second level. This is exterior elevation showing the window enclosures and some selective demolition going on. The windows that have already been abated and removed. Lower level entrance under abatement containment blocked off. This is the back corner of the first floor of the main library. Again, selective demolition, ceilings coming down, walls removed. A lot of the casework that was attached to the walls has been removed and segregated to the center of the floor. Window enclosures preparing for the window abatement on the main level. Some more interior selective demolition from the main library first floor. Window enclosures again for abatement work, other elevation. Window removals and enclosures taking place. Some more enclosures for abatement. And this is the exterior window abatement and removals on the Mountain Ave elevation. As you can see, as I scroll through these pictures as well, the first pages were the most recent photos. As we go down, we get later on, or I should say earlier in the month of October, depending on how you look at it. Temp fence being installed along the Prosser side of the brook. Same thing here, different view, scrim going in. Temp fence along the upper side of Prosser. Scrim and temp fence going in on the Mountain Ave side, Prosser side. And that basically rounds us to the end here. If you guys like to see or have any questions or comments, what you'd like to see in photos, please let me know. And I'll make sure I'll add that to the monthly report, what you guys like to see, what you want to see. And we could snap some photos for that. That's pretty much it on the update for Prosser and Riley and the site and, you know, what's taken place so far out there.
Well, it's great to see real progress. It's a beautiful thing. A beautiful thing looking at demolition. So
There's no turning back now.
it's great. It's great. Yeah, and thank you for Anthony and team for finding anything and everything that can be accomplished, you know, while we're waiting for these permits to.
A big one would be getting Dwight to sign off on this Riley side. Again, those utilities are above ground. The building doesn't have a basement, so nothing's going to be trenched. So if he could give us a blessing on that, that would be a nice chunk to take down there.
Great. Okay. Patrick.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So Anthony, great photos. I love seeing all that progress. Just a quick thing for your field office. Did you ever get the okay to get the electrical hooked up to that? And
Yeah, that's a good point. We did. We got permanent power hooked up today. We're just waiting for the meter to get installed tomorrow. And then we have power on, we have heat on, our
awesome.
internet's ready to go. So we're there.
Okay. Excellent. And one other thing, where you said the post was in for the sign that's going up tomorrow, where is that
Yep.
going to be placed?
That's going to be at the corner, I think, of Mountain Ave up there. Nancy, I think you were working it out with Jason of
Yep.
where you wanted it to go. Okay.
Actually, I think it might be on Tunxus.
Is it on the Tunxus side of
I think we
things?
put it on the Tunxus side of
Okay.
things.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I know those. I know those posts were set today, and the sheet is going to go up tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions for Anthony? Lois?
Maybe it's not for, not for Anthony, but I wonder who in the town government has been in touch with DEP to make sure that once we get the DECD go ahead, that we also get the DEP permit.
I know the town engineer has an ear to DEP. I know at higher levels than that, there's a chance, you know, to talk to DEP, but in the meantime, that's not going to happen until this other DECD issue is resolved. So, you know, there won't be talk, you know, or anything else other than at a technical level at this point.
Thank you.
Okay, so Scott, what you got for us?
Good evening. So been going through with the town, the review of the budget and breaking it out. We had a total project budget for both libraries and breaking it out between the libraries for Prosser and McMahon with the costs. And we've put this summary report together to kind of get down to brass tacks for what is left for McMahon. So we've gone through the professional services for owner expenses and owner expenses. So the professional services is all your, you know, architect, engineers, all your consultants, testing agencies, owner expenses like the move and storage. And we've taken those costs and broke them up between Prosser and McMahon. We've also taken the construction costs with the committed costs that we have. So we have a committed cost for Prosser Library, the $27 million. We have a pre-construction committed cost for McMahon. That was what was left for pre-construction, $73,000. So if you add those two costs up together, that's that guaranteed maximum price that was put in for the project that we have at hand. And then we have uncommitted costs for McMahon, which is about $1.5 million for McMahon. And then we broke up FF&E and technology costs, $1 million for Prosser, almost $400,000 for McMahon, future costs. And then we took the contingency and broke up $1.5 million for Prosser and $100,000 for McMahon. And what we have found is that when you take your uncommitted costs for McMahon, $1.5 million, your furniture costs of $400,000, and your contingency of $100,000, you have about a little over $2 million budgeted for work that everyone's looking to do for McMahon. So that's what we've been working on for budgets at this time, based on the total project budget and breaking it out.
Okay, I'll open up for questions. I just want to thank Glenn Garrity and DPW for everything they provided to date and their continued participation. Glenn did provide us with cost estimates for the work that we saw in his report, and just round numbers, it was in the vicinity of about $700,000 for that work. So, we have a lot more money, relatively speaking, to do interior work finishes, whatever transformation we can do in there within that budget, to be determined again by, library and architect, programming, etc. And also I understand, Glenn, that DPW, can, provide us with the implementation of those items in your report as well. So we can basically keep that out of the, out of the loop with, other than coordination with the architect and the CM. So that's really helpful. So we thank you for that. We'll go to questions. Lois.
I'm sorry, could you tell me what the Glenn Garrity report is and when we commissioned that and what other work we have identified as needing to be done or able to be done at McMahon? I seem to have missed that piece.
Yeah, that was shared.
I have it. I can share it, Mark, if you'd like.
Yeah, that would be good.
If you can keep talking, I'll share it.
Well, let's let Patrick ask a question while we're
Okay, there we go.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess what I was just wondering is that bottom line amount where it said uncommitted, is that the total that we have right now for McMahon, or was it the previous total, that 2.7 million? I think I missed Scott's explanation on that.
Yeah, the I can jump in there, Scott.
Go ahead.
The 2.7 is the total budget side of the equation for McMahon, but we've spent money on McMahon. So when you take
Okay.
what we've already spent, we're left with that just over 2 million.
Okay, gotcha. That
Right.
makes sense. So if we were to proceed, did I hear you say that Glenn's staff can do some of the work?
Yeah, well, why don't we let Nancy run through
Okay.
this, and you'll see the portion of work that DPW can handle.
Okay.
All right, I think, Lois, to get back to your original question, I think that DPW had forwarded a recommendation of things that they thought needed to be done at McMahon. And I'm not sure we did actually share the details at a meeting. Glenn kindly went back and updated cost estimates, which we were able to use when we were responding to the first inquiry we had gotten from DECD. So anyways, I'll just run through these real quick. And Glenn's staff would not necessarily do these, but Glenn would manage the process if he was going to get, for instance, someone to do the first one, which would be the fire alarm upgrade. A lot of these are life safety and building issues. The second thing that they would look to do would be replacing the rooftop unit. And then do some building automation integration. The majority of these things, I believe, we have not yet had a meeting with the architect, but these are things that would not need to be redone should in the future additional funds become available to do the full expansion of McMahon. The electrical panel upgrades, getting them all up, the circuit panels, a lighting retrofit with LED. Actually, I think Glenn's staff did do some of these in other town facilities. I'm not sure if you would contract this out, but updated lighting, installation of a security system on the same platform as what other town buildings have. And this is also the same platform that will be in the new Prosser. Replace the roof. Although it's not on this list because there is no cost to the town, we would still seek to get the panels, the same type of panels for solar panels that we're going to have on Prosser. We would anticipate putting them on this new roof. Obviously, we don't want to put them on a roof that's old, so we would do the roof replacement now. The masonry ceiling, window replacement, separate from the storefront entryway, the storefront remodel on the east and west side, flooring replacements, that would be carpeting, and they would be working with the architect, obviously. I think later on in the meeting, you'll see some of the finishes that have been worked on for Prosser. We would anticipate doing the same thing here and coordinating it with the staff. Emergency door replacement, and then an ADA compliant water fountain. So the total of these are estimates are $655,000. So that's the DPW list of work.
And I believe, for some reason, I thought this was incorporated in the architect's report previously, so I apologize if it wasn't.
I think he referred to it, but I don't think they attached it.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's it's all needed, important things that will stay, regardless of what happens in the future. Whether some addition eventually comes to McMahon or not. So I think it makes a lot of sense. And again, having Public Works volunteering to handle this, to manage this, is fantastic. It's just fantastic. Yes, there will be, looks like we have the budget to kind of double this amount of work, at least, from an architectural perspective, plus the FF&E and technology budgets that Scott presented to us as well. So, there's a lot to be determined here as we move forward. But I think, in general, to put our arms around, embracing, doing all that we can here with the $2 million is important tonight. We'll hear from TSKP on that as well. More questions for Scott. Patrick, is that? We got, Elizabeth, go ahead. You're muted. Elizabeth, you're muted. With some technical difficulties. Patrick, why don't you go ahead while we're waiting for Elizabeth?
Okay, yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So are you asking then for this committee to say it's okay for DPW to get started on that list? Are we looking to start that work, ASAP, or are we going to wait until TSKP provides their architecture plan for what the interior is going to be? I mean, I'm not sure how the two are supposed to, interact together. The inside versus all of the work that DPW has planned out.
Right. And yes, there will need to be some coordination, but I don't see any issues in having DPW start the process. There's plenty of pre-construction work they need to do to determine, what's going to happen here, and the coordination can happen, coincidentally with that. So yes, I think we should let DPW loose on this. Again, working in conjunction with the library and TSKP, so that we get it all coordinated and make sure it's what we want and what we need. But yes, I think that can get going right away. There is an urgency also, in that, we have built into the project right now, into the budget, we have monies to extend our time in the swing space, based on the Prosser schedule. But because we're not going to be building the addition to McMahon, we could conceivably finish McMahon a lot sooner than was originally anticipated. and move back into it and avoid additional swing space costs, you know, beyond our lease time. So I believe there's some urgency there too that we, you know, can be exploring, get McMahon done, and possibly, you know, get out of the swing space. Because everything we do not spend on that line item for additional swing space can go back into McMahon. So, you know, we have that opportunity to look at that and see if that makes sense. So another reason to let everybody loose on, you know, getting these things pinned down and get the project moving. Elizabeth, have you? I think we lost Elizabeth. She must be signing back in again. All right, so when she comes back, we will let her speak. Other questions? All right. Scott, are we good for now?
Yeah, I think so. I think that concludes Downs's update.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
So let's move on to our architect.
Yeah, I think I would,
Jeff, and we have Abby.
Abby. Yeah. So I have nothing really more to add than what's already been said. So at this point, I'd like to just turn over to Abby and let us listen to her walk us through the Prosser Library interiors. So Abby, if you could take it away, that'd be great.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Hi, everybody. My name is Abby Periasamy. I'm one of the interior designers here at TSKP Studio. I've been working with Jeanette O'Connell on this project a lot. She was not unable to be here tonight, so I will be presenting the interior finish palette for the Prosser Library. Since this is, we're actually talking materials and colors, I don't know how it's going to show up on your screen, but we did have the opportunity to meet with the director, library director, Elizabeth, the assistant director, Allison, and the IT director, Chris, on Monday. And we got some good feedback from them. And so I'm here pretty confident to show you those finishes to you. And hopefully end of my presentation, we will I will have an approval to move forward in what we think is the right approach for this project. And I'm going to share my screen now.
Yeah, we see it.
Yeah, wait, do you see me scroll?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so some of the images I'm going to show you tonight, you might have already seen in a different version. We just tried to add some finishes when possible to show you how that plays a role into the project. I'll walk you through the plan real quick. So we have a few different colors happening on this plan to show the different materials. Most of the library is going to be carpeted, and we think we would be using 3 different carpets for 3 different areas of this library. The first one is going to be the adult area, where we would have a much more neutral palette. The children's area, we want to have a little more fun, so I'll show you the products in a little bit. And the community center, we were thinking would be the 3rd carpet. Now, all these carpets are from the same manufacturers, and they're very close in specifications. They all come, they've been specified with a stain-resistant finish, and they come with the backing that's called an Infinity 2, which is one of the superior type of backing material. It helps it helps with the tufting and holding of the face yarn. And also it has a good tar rating, which is the appearance retention rating. It's basically the wear and tear of a product. These are all contract grade material, and they are all they'll have lifetime limited warranties on them. And now during our presentation on Monday, Elizabeth and her team were able to actually see these carpets and feel them, and they understand the quality of the product that was shown. Now, quickly walking through the building, we start with the vestibules. Now, all the vestibules on the first floor and on the lower level will have walk-off mat, and it'll be one of those nubbly type rough carpet to scrub off all the dirt and dust before someone walks into the main area. This main library area, the hall with the tall windows, will be all carpet. The staircase, the monumental staircase, will have porcelain tile. We would bring the same porcelain tile into this area where we have the big architectural openings, but we would continue the same carpet into the adult area also. So there would be a connection between the hall and the adult area, and we're trying to mimic the architectural details and trying to complement that while we're doing the finishes also. Some of the other back rooms will have some resilient flooring in some areas, like the cafe and the corridor that leads to the community room, the circulation office here. Bathrooms will have porcelain tile. It's a different colored porcelain tile, different from the tile that's out here in the hall. The stairs and the elevators will have rubber flooring, and the entire lower level will also have rubber flooring. Now, as we move to the upper floor, we would continue the same carpet that was used downstairs in the adult area, upstairs also, because it's the same adult space. And in order to not bring in a fourth carpet, we thought we would just continue the same throughout the administrative office areas also. Back here, the staff lounge will have the resilient flooring, which in this case is linoleum. And again, the toilet rooms will have porcelain tile on the floor and ceramic tile on the walls. Quickly going into a rendering. You've probably seen this before, and I just wanted to bring this as a reminder. We're trying to keep with this architectural quality while doing the finishes. These big arch windows have these brick lining, and all the wood in this image up on the ceiling, on the millwork circulation desk, on the columns, will all be this nice warm birch wood. The carpet, we're trying to keep it pretty neutral because we want to maintain that calm and composed nature of the space and not take away from the other architectural elements in this space. And as I move on, I will show you some, this is a little close-up view of the carpet. It's a modular carpet, it's a carpet tile. It would be an 18 inches by 36 inch carpet tile that would be installed in what we call ashlar, or more like a staggered tile. The nice thing about this carpet is it has some grays and brown tones in it, and in several shades. This particular picture is not doing enough justice, but the actual carpet itself has more variation. It's a very good carpet in the sense that it's a contract grade rated for heavy duty use. And the other thing is this is also very nice for soil hiding. So we think this will be a much more timeless way to keep this space and maintain this vibe. If you have any questions, please stop me anytime, because I can talk a lot.
So Abby, that's showing it next to the finish on the wood.
Yes, yes, this is the carpet and this would be the wood. And the walls would be a very neutral, not a stark white, but more like a off-white type color, which would be the same color, very close to the color used on the metal window frames also. So we're trying to not bring in too much color in the space, because there is also a chance to spice the space up with when we do the furniture, which is another package for another day. But we can always bring in some furniture pieces in different colors, maybe carry this brick tones in deep reds and burgundy. So this kind of a neutral palette seemed to work well. Actually, a couple hours ago, I got an email from Allison, and she was hoping that we would look into other colors for this carpet in the main area. And I'd like to wait for the submittals to come in, and then we can see what other options we have. But the main idea for this space, including the upstairs, is to keep a very neutral scheme for the interior finishes and maybe bring some pops of color in furniture.
Abby, we have one question from Lois.
Sure.
Abby, I have a couple questions. What about the acoustic effects of the carpet?
This carpet, I don't know the NRC rating offhand, but the backing and this is a 28-ounce carpet, and it's about 12 stitches per inch. So it's a very dense and thick pile carpet. So the carpet itself is commercially rated. Although I don't have the exact numbers, I can give you that information, but it has all the acoustic properties that is necessary for carpet for commercial use.
The other question is the wood. Is it real wood? Or is it manufactured wood? What is it?
So Jeff, jump in.
Yeah, I can jump in here. It's basically, it's, can everybody hear me? Yeah, it's basically real wood. It's a birch veneer plywood, and we have the exposed glulam beams. So it's all real wood. And then I should also say that in between the brick edges of those pilasters is acoustical panels. So the white that you see in there, those are full height acoustical panels that are recessed into that wall. So that's going to definitely help with acoustics as well.
So the wood is not laminated, it actually is birch.
No.
Yeah, well, it's a birch plywood, and we're trying to get a quarter sawn cut and not the random cut to make it look very calming and very, because sometimes you can get some really loud grains in some of the pines and different species. So the birch is kind of a way to sort of calm the space down a little bit and complement the glulam timber framing that's in there.
This is the color of the wood, and this is real wood. It's just our control sample that we have now. When we get the submittals, we'll make sure it matches this, because wood is it's a natural product. It's going to be slightly different in color, but we will try to control the color as much as possible. But yes, all that is wood. The millwork here will all be wood.
I would add my my requests to Allison's and say I would love to see what other colors are possible.
For the carpet? Okay.
Yes.
All right. All right. Okay. So I just showed you this picture. This is the color of the wood. Now, we had a lot more wood in the project, which was unfortunately weed out. But we found this laminate, which we can use, which complements the real wood that will be used in the public areas. So all that you see here is going to be real wood, but in like the back offices, and I'll show you a plan, maybe like upstairs in the back offices in the technical services area where we have some millwork, in the mail room, the staff lounge, And on the first floor, the circulation office behind the desk. The desk itself will have real wood, but the circulation office behind where there is some millwork, those will be plastic laminate. And similarly, well, this office, the children's office here, those will also be plastic laminate, but the actual desk, the service desk, will be wood. So we found what we think is a good color combination. And this laminate also is available in a lot of furniture lines. So we thought when we do the furniture, we can match this laminate. So the millwork and the furniture will be coordinated when the time comes. But it's always a nice thing to think ahead of time. So that's pretty much what we are looking at for the main area and the upstairs also. I will look into the carpet choices, and when we get the submittals, we'll find some choices for you to look at. Moving on to the community room. So we thought we would jazz this space up a little because, as you probably have seen this, there is going to be a lot of the wood in this space also. The warm wood up on the ceiling, and we'll have acoustical panels in the front. This will be fabric wrapped. And on the back wall, which is obviously not in this image, also has painted acoustical panels. All the paint, we would try and keep this nice neutral color so the wood stands out more. But for carpet, we thought something like this would be more fun, because this is it's a community room, and I understand the library has not had a community room for a long time to carry on some of the activities. And this particular carpet is also an 18 by 36 modular tile with the same type of backing, which I already told you about. And the nice thing is this is a sort of a random pattern in that this one colorway actually has 16 different tiles in it, meaning one in every 16 tiles will have the same pattern. And what we would end up getting is a nice, fun, and very different type of flooring. And if I were to show you in this image, it's not very clear, but it would have a certain direction to it, but there would be colors ranging from anywhere from a very yellowish green to blues. And blues are one of our very popular choices because it's probably one of the most non-offensive colors and sort of universally acceptable to most people. And greens and blues naturally have a very healing tendency. And in this particular scenario, we're bringing it to pop up this whole space and jazz it up a little. Any questions here? Comments?
Nope, don't see any.
Okay, great. All right, moving on to the children's area. In the children's area, we thought we would do something a little more fun. And we found this particular carpet, which actually looks like if you ever have played with dandelions and tried to blow them and see how it spreads. And we've all done that possibly as kids. And the idea was that when we walk in from this adult space down to the children's area, we walk into this blooming field of space, which blooms into this beautiful green and blue area with the clouds up above, which is actually acoustic ceiling tiles, but they kind of work as a very natural landscape in some senses. And we would maintain the same wood, the warm birch wood throughout, and keep the walls pretty neutral. We can do some accent walls. We haven't come to that details yet. I just wanted to first get your feedback on the general color scheme, and then we can get into those kind of details. But this is the general idea of what we are thinking to do in the children's room. This particular children's carpet is actually a slightly thicker ounce weight. It's more like 32 ounce compared to 28 in the other areas, which means this is going to perform better acoustically. And also children have the tendency to sit on the floor a lot. So this would be a much softer floor to sit. And we can still pop this space up with more color, like you see that orange chair over there. Now this furniture is just used for rendering purposes, just to show you some proportion and scale and the space that we're dealing with. But this would not be the, well, there is no assurance that this is the final furniture that we would end up with. But the idea is that we would have this kind of a carpet, and we can still bring more color into the space if we want to go in that direction. And we will have that sort of a midnight blue up above, and we would have the white clouds hanging. This soffit could be a nice blue just to mimic the sky. Again, that's something we can discuss if but generally among our TSKP team, we seem to like this approach for the children's area. Now, any questions?
Questions, comments? No.
Okay. Quickly, just to show, as we walk from this adult area into the children's room, this wall, we have some low bookcases. And this is a possibility for a fish tank. And there is a little column here. There was a request to do something interesting, like a wall mural along this wall. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. And this is, again, just for discussion. We don't have to decide on this right away. One of the themes that we thought we could use was a fish theme, because we have this fish tank, and we just wanted to show you how that would go with the carpet in this space. These are bookshelves that will be purchased later. Now, and there is this column, so there would be two pieces. What we specified, the material specified is a wall covering, a commercial grade heavy duty wall covering. And this is a digital artwork that would be printed, a custom artwork printed on this wall covering. This is just one of the ideas we came up with to use this fish theme. And we could bring in an accent color, which can be something that we pull off from this artwork to cover this column, and even behind these stacks and the fish tank. In the event that at some point these stacks are taken away, you will still see a colored wall and not just an unfinished or white wall. So that the theme, we would run the theme throughout the wall and not just try to stop it somewhere in the middle. This is one of the ideas. The second one was a much more nature type landscape idea. Again, we would color this column, any of the accent colors. In this case, we chose a green, but we could also bring in the blue of the lake. Now, again, in Allison's email today, I think the library would like to see other options for this digital artwork. But the idea behind whatever we end up doing here is that we would carry something that speaks well with the carpet. And it has to be the commercially rated product, because it has to meet a certain flame resistance and fire ratings that is needed for a commercial use, public use building. But we can decide on the actual image at a later, in the near future. But this is basically our idea. In our past experiences with digital artwork is designing this product takes time, but deciding on this product takes even more time. because there are a lot of people with a lot of opinions, and we'd like to hear everybody's opinions and make sure everybody's happy in the end. So, but this is just to show you a concept of what we are thinking to do at this wall. No questions? Oh, yes.
Lois has a question.
Yes.
I would be looking for something that had more educational value. Maps, something about, I mean, you could develop this into something about the weather system or the environment. I really think kids need to have an opportunity to learn stuff on every space in this library. And this seems to me to be filling space, but not contributing a lot of thought.
Okay.
That's pretty direct, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. It's just that the direction we were given early on was that to follow the saying, bloom as, no, there was a saying for the town. I can't remember it now, but so we were trying to keep with that bloom as we go, I think, that type of a theme. But I totally understand where you come from, and we can certainly look into that also.
I don't know.
It's a great opportunity, you know.
Yeah, I don't know if it's appropriate here, but I know I was doing some research on the town some time ago, and it wasn't the brown drum sort of made in Bloomfield
Not
during
sort
the
of, it was.
Civil War. I mean, maybe there is some opportunity here to do some local stuff as well. Could be
Okay.
really nice. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, like I said, we could certainly look into this, and that's the purpose of this meeting, to make sure that we are heading in the right direction as you want us to. Okay, we will look at that. So moving on to some of the last few finishes in this project. Now, the next slide I'm going to show you is very great, but not all these elements are going to be in the same spot. This is the linoleum product, which is the resilient tile that we will be using in some of the areas, like the cafe here. The cafe, the corridor that leads to the community room. And upstairs we had more like the storage areas, the mail room, the staff lounge area. Such areas will have the linoleum tile. This has some patterning to it, and it's a very forgiving tile, but it installs just like any resilient tile. And we've had great success using this product. It's easy to maintain and clean. The bathrooms will have a porcelain tile that looks like this. It has a slight linear pattern to it. And it would be a 12 by 24. To show you a quick rendering of this. These are some of our drawings. One of the bathrooms. This is what the tile size would look like in this room. And all the walls have ceramic tile up to about 6 feet 3 inches, above which we would have painted chipboard. Now, we prefer to go with a very neutral scheme because that certainly is timeless, and we don't want to startle anybody or shock anybody. So this is the floor tile and the ceramic wall tile. Well, above the little bit of wall that's shown, we can either do a slightly darker shade on the wall, or we can even keep it the rest of the wall color that we're using everywhere else. But we thought the darker shade would probably look nicer in tying the floor and the wall. This is the toilet partition color, which is just a dark gray, which again would be very soil hiding and easy to clean and maintain. The next area is the kitchen behind the cafe. Now, this kitchen has a door, but this is an opening and there is a counter in front of that opening. Behind are some cabinets that look like this. We'll have a refrigerator in this corner, and there's going to be a lot of cabinets, base cabinets, and some upper cabinets with a sink at this end. These cabinets, we thought it would be nice to bring in just a neutral dark gray for the base cabinets and a lighter gray for the top cabinets, and the backsplash would just be the white. In this area. Now, this is the laminate that we have, which is the typical laminate we would have throughout in most of the other areas where we have, where we now have plastic laminate instead of the wood. But in the kitchen, we would just do more of a gray scheme. And so again, the kitchen would carry this, and the cafe area would have this linoleum on the floor. Now, this cafe area is also another area where we could do some color. We have this wall designated as an art wall for now, where we could display some artwork. We are showing some tables and chairs here and even here. Again, the furniture pieces are another way to bring color into this cafe space. But the rest of the space, we like to keep it nice and neutral so that the other, like if it's paint and somebody doesn't like the color, it's easy enough to change. But if it's a permanently installed product, that can be a challenge to change. So we like to keep a neutral landscape as much as possible and build other things and bring more color into these spaces, either through furniture or wall accent paints. Any questions or comments? Because I'm almost done.
No.
Okay. So we did that. So that was it. The presentation is over, and I will look into the carpet colors and the digital wall covering. We'll look to see what else we can do there. I see a couple of questions.
Oh, yeah, and I just want to let everybody know that Abby will be sharing this with Glenn at DPW, who of course is responsible for maintaining the building. Right. So that's going to happen. So we have a question from Lois and then from Glenn.
Mine is more of a comment.
Mm-hmm.
I get cool and the gray and the kind of not jumping out at people and good maintenance. But in general, it doesn't seem cheerful to me. And most particularly the carpeting for the main center and the upstairs. Okay. I think the idea of the one in the, I don't understand why the cheeriness that's going into the community room couldn't also be in the rest of the building. We don't need to be so serious. We've had an old building that was kind of dark and people love it, but we have a new building now. And I would love to see the whole feeling of it be lighter and more cheerful.
Okay. We can certainly bring in, like I said, we would bring in, we're thinking of maybe adding some pops of reds or rusts into this space through furniture, but we can look at other carpet options that would go well with the rest of the palette here. And point noted.
Yeah, it's a really challenging space because there's so much wood and so much open, window area that are forming what happens here, that like you said, Abby, you don't want to compete with that. Right. Those are the main elements. So, but it will be interesting, I think, to see some other choices on what it does to those things in the room. Okay, thanks, Lois. Glenn.
Yes, I just wanted to refer briefly to the birch plywood acoustical panels throughout the library. I just had one concern over those. In the past, I've dealt with some delamination and warpage concerns based on relative humidity temperatures in the building. Usually if we creep north of 55%, we experience problems with these panels. Perhaps it's a different mill thickness or finish, but certainly that's got to be a consideration, is having pretty strict humidity control throughout the library to prevent that.
Yeah, if I can speak a little bit to that, we
Yeah,
just
thank you.
finished the state's first net zero school. It was 80 some thousand square feet. I think it was about 80,000 square feet, where a lot of the main cafeteria spaces and all the classrooms have the same system. It's basically a plywood 2 foot wide by 8 or 10 foot long pieces that are on sleepers, and they're fastened every 2 feet. And it's a fire treated panel system. So it's not like your typical plywood. And it's, the humidity, the climate controls in the building is always maintained. So we haven't had any issues at all with it so far. Note taken. I'll relook at the submittal to make sure that we get everything that we specified and to assure that that wouldn't happen. But basically, these things are going to be fastened, at least every 2 feet, possibly 1 foot. I'll have to look at the fastening schedule. Where Downs is going to put the sleepers. So there shouldn't be any sagging, any delamination of this system.
I appreciate that, Jeff. I only brought it up because I have dealt with that issue in the past, and I know it can get rather expensive in a hurry. If we go beyond a warranty.
I hear what you're saying. I think that the issue sometimes maybe with the past spaces that you've been dealing with is that maybe they weren't climatically controlled. This is going to be a brand new mechanical HVAC system, and it's going to be, it's got to be controlled. So we shouldn't have any issues with it. I just want to note as well that these wood panels are not acoustic wood panels. They're actually just a normal veneer plywood that's actually a fire rated assembly. So it's a different kind of glue. It's a different kind of everything. So the acoustic conditions that we're dealing with is on the walls, the carpet, the acoustical panels in between the bricks. So we're addressing the acoustics, everywhere else. So those panels are not acoustic plywood panels.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff, if I might add, we have had an issue with a newer building that does have climate control, and some of these issues did happen. If the space is not occupied, or it's not occupied at all, or it's a different occupancy, it does affect the climate control, which then in turn affected some of the laminations. So I just because it was a brand new building with climate control, that actually exacerbated the issue that we had in one of our newer buildings.
Okay, now that was a continuous panel that looked like this. It went from glue lam to glue lam.
I don't know. That I don't know that. All I know is that there was an issue, and it was related to the fact that we did have this it was the humidity part of it because of the occupied versus unoccupied spaces.
Okay, I'll look deeper into that issue, just, besides satisfying you guys, but my own curiosity. And I suspect that if the edges are exposed, which in this case they're not, that might be a different scenario. If it's like a cloud or the edges are exposed between the panels, then there might be a possibility for that. But this is a sealed, closed system that it shouldn't happen. But I'll look into it.
Thank you. Glenn, you good?
Yep, that's all the input I had for now. I appreciate your response, Jeff.
Well, yeah, we thank you again.
And we'll get you all the material information, Glenn. And if you have any other concerns about any of the other materials we've shown so far, just shoot us an email.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Abby, it sounds like you'll be back to us.
Yes.
Back to the library staff.
The carpets and the digital artwork. We'll do a little more research on the town and the town's history, or find something that would be more educational and appropriate.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm assuming
well,
everything else is fine? The
Well,
carpet and the children's and,
I'd like to say something quickly. Maybe, Abby, we can reach out to Lois and some others to see if they have any ideas, because I'm sure they know the history and they know what could be really nice to have on those walls. It'd be nice to have a collaborative, discussion as we
Mhm.
go along with this.
Yeah, Lois?
Yeah.
I think it would be great if we could meet together in person.
Okay.
As you were able to do with the library staff, maybe our next meeting could be. If it has, some people have to be by Zoom, maybe others could be there to actually see the things. It's
Okay.
hard over the
yeah, it would
on the
be
computer
much
just
easier.
to understand what the details are.
That is very true. The virtual meetings to do material presentations is a very tough one. It's one of the COVID effects I'm still feeling. But if there are any of you who would like to see the actual samples, we can certainly fix a time to either meet separately on a different day or maybe at the next building committee meeting. Whatever works for you, we'll make it work.
Yeah, well, why don't we plan on an in-person or combined kind of meeting for our next meeting on November 15th to do that. And perhaps these materials can be left at town hall as well to view. Town hall or our swing space, we can work out places for the public to come see.
Yep.
Because you're right, Lois, there's a big difference when you see them and touch them and the lighting and etc. So I think that's a great idea to do that. So Abby, if you would plan on that, please.
Okay,
For
sure.
November 15th. More questions for Abby, our design team? I would like to get a formal approval from the committee that we proceed with option 1 among the 4 options that we've been looking at for McMahon. I realize, we still have some work to do to pin down the final scope of that, what we can afford, what it's going to be made up of. But I think in general, the concept of option 1, I think is something, we should move forward with at this time. Questions, comments on that, a motion?
I move that.
So moved.
Uh,
Sorry, Lois.
No, go ahead, Bob. You
So
go ahead.
moved.
I'll second it.
Okay, so let's get a little wording into that motion if we can.
I move that we proceed with the option 1 as presented by TSKP.
Second.
Right, and Mr. Chair, could we also add to that we're also saying that Department of Public Works can also be included in that and start to go further with what work they have to do.
Lois and Bob, you good with that?
I think that's a great addition.
Yes, I agree. Very, very good, Patrick.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
Okay, questions, comments on a motion?
I have
Elizabeth.
questions and comments. So I guess my first question is, what happens with the original project? Are we making recommendations about that? Are we?
No, we're proceeding with option 1.
I'm sorry, just so everybody knows, what was option 1?
Option 1 was to implement the recommendations of DPW and to include as many other architectural features that we can afford within the budget that are generally, interior modifications, finishes. There's some site work to be done, I'm sure, and we'll pin all this down. I mean, this is a concept at this point as far as the money.
Mark, it's actually in the minutes. It's limited renovation within the available funds.
Okay. I mean,
So that covers all those areas.
Okay. I mean, some comments on that. I think, we'll be able to afford making sure the parking lot meets handicap accessibility, electric vehicle charging stations. I foresee us doing the outdoor reading area as well. I think that's a, significant feature from the original design that could still be implemented within that. But again, all this is to be discussed and developed.
So the amount though is we have about $1.7 million to work with.
We have 2 million, which includes some contingency. It includes technology. It includes FF&E.
Okay. I think pertinent to this discussion is the fact that one of the questions DECD did ask was how much was needed, how much the bids were over. So I'm curious where they plan to go with that question. I also wanted to share with this committee that Southington actually started their building project, and one of their representatives was able to get them $5 million more to add more space. And that was interesting. So I'm still hopeful that we can go to our politicians to see if we could get more to see the project closer to what was originally promised. And also, last but not least, the state library, their grants are now up to from $1 million to $2 million. So there's a lot of pots of money out there. And I hope that we do as much as possible to keep that in mind with the direction we're going, that if we do get more money down the road, that that could be incorporated as soon as possible. It was really interesting to me to see Southington switching gears mid-project to accept $5 million more. So I just think that that's stuff that we should keep in mind. Thank you.
Yeah, and we've been continually saying that whatever we do should not interfere with anything that we do in the future, with the building. But we also did learn from DECD in their meeting and their issued criteria that there are no magic additional funds from them. If we want to seek additional funds with them, it's the same process. Reapply on their schedule whenever they have the next round, which I believe is December, and all that occurs via the town council. So nothing's changed with regard to additional money from CIF grants. Just the fact that we have this grant now, or hope to keep this grant now, does not put us in a better or worse position in terms of the application process. It's the same thing. So I have no comment on Southington. Surely, when you hear all the facts, it's a lot different than hearsay about what's going on in another town. And hearsay got us in trouble already with newspaper articles waving a red flag that we were doing nothing at McMahon. So I really like to avoid that kind of partial information, especially about projects that aren't ours. Ava.
Yeah, thanks. I know we're talking about option one. So far, all we've seen is a very rough, almost like a pencil sketch. So we would see further developed sketches. I'm hoping.
Absolutely. This would be the same process that we covered, in all the designs so far, working closely between the architect and the library team to develop, what makes sense and what we can do.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so we have the motion on the floor. Any other questions, comments on it? All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Or raise your virtual hand. Thank you, Chris. Dr.
Any
Bryant?
Anybody abstaining? Chair votes yes. I believe it's unanimous.
It's unanimous, yes.
Okay, all right, motion passes. Thank you, everybody. We have a direction here, and yes, a lot more work to do on it. But I think we're good at it. Right. Okay, so let's go to Sean from Colliers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be brief. I've been meeting with Jason, the site super from Downs, as some of this site preparation and abatement work is happening, to try and follow up on his schedule and what Downs is presenting. Also been working with the commissioning agent. For those of you that don't know, a commissioning agent is someone that comes in at the very end of the project, a third party that checks all the HVAC systems, mechanical, plumbing. But we get them involved in the beginning of the project so he can work closely with Downs along the way and collect the information they need for a proper closeout. So that is being worked on. And the materials testing agent is also an independent party. Their PO is in place, and I will continue to work with Downs to have them scheduled at the appropriate times during construction for things like soil compaction and concrete testing to make sure everything meets the plans and specs. And that's all I have for a report.
Questions for Sean? All right, thanks. Thanks, Sean. Nice to have you on board. So we can move on to purchases and invoices, Nancy.
Yeah. Okay, we do have one purchase, and that would be for custodial supplies for the swing space from New England Industrial Supply for $660.13.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Ike, seconded by
Second,
second from Lois. Thank you very much. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Raise your
Aye.
virtual hand. Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Motion passes. Nancy?
Yep, we're done with purchases on invoices. The first invoice I have is for $35,000 for our next rental payment due to the Atrium LLC, and it's $35,000, and it is their invoice number 2847.
So
That's
moved.
moved by Mr. Ike, seconded by
Second.
by Patrick. Thank you very much. That's as per our lease, Nancy.
Yes, it is.
Questions, comments? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Next one is Van Zelm. This is our commissioning agent, as Sean had mentioned. It's invoice number 51172 for $907.20.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Ike, seconded by
Aye.
Chris.
Chris. Thank you, Chris. Discussion, questions? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Raise your virtual hand. Thank you very much. Motion passes. Next.
Next is from Novus Insight, invoice number 16112. And this was from networking assistance to get the swing space up and running. And it's in the amount of $1,400.
So moved.
By Mr. Ike, seconded by
I'll second.
Patrick. Thank you very much. Questions, comments? All in
So
favor?
that was IT related, right, Nancy?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 And motion passes. Thank you very much. Next.
Impact fire equipment. This is this one actually dates back to the summer. It was for Prosser, invoice number, sorry, I can't see. 370-13179, and this is the monthly fee for the fire alarm monitoring system, which, by the way, is no longer active.
You want to do it together with the McMahon one?
Yes, there's also one for McMahon Wittenberry. It's invoice number 370-13180. This one still is active, by the way.
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Mr. Ike for two invoices, seconded by Lois. Thank you. Comments, questions? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Your digital hand. I didn't see anything from Dr. Bryant.
I said aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, TSKP Studio, invoice number 200802-21. This is for Prosser Basic Services through through September. And it's in the amount of $16,666.80.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Ike, seconded by
Second.
Patrick. Thank you very much. This is 5.56% of construction administration services. Questions, comments? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion passes. Thank you. Nancy?
And then we have one more for TSKP. That's invoice number 220103-18. These are for McMahon Basic Services through September 30th, and it's in the amount of $3,360.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Ike, seconded by Lois. So this is the added services for McMahon, correct?
Yes, it is.
Our added design not to exceed $4,000.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Questions, comments? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Again. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Other business from the committee? See any hands? Okay, thank you very much. So we have a meeting on November 15th. We'll make sure that one occurs in person as well, so we get our hands and eyes on finished samples. Hopefully we can get a good attendance in person.
Will that be hybrid, Mr. Chairman?
Look forward
Will
to
that be
it.
a hybrid meeting?
Yes,
Hybrid?
it will be a hybrid, yes. Are you gonna be on another boat?
Yeah, shortly after that.
Okay, all right. And then we have the end of the month on the 29th as well. Those are upcoming meetings. Nancy, we have some public
People,
attendees. Anybody?
does
with
anyone from the public
Now's your
wish
time.
to speak? Raise your virtual hand. I guess they're observing tonight. No
Oh,
one's
thank
hand is
you.
raised.
Thank you for attending. Appreciate that. And with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Ike, seconded by Patrick. Thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much.
Aye.
Raise your
Aye.
hands, wave goodbye, and I
Good
think we
meeting.
accomplished a lot tonight, so thank you, everybody.
Good meeting.
Thank you.
Night.
Bye, everybody.